Well, here it is, the first week in November 2022. Yes, that's right, November. And we're headed to the Texas coast. We're going to a place you've probably never heard of. Even if you've lived in Texas all your life and you've visited the Texas coast, you probably don't know this place. Now, if you have lived in Texas all your life and you have visited the Texas coast, you probably know of a really nice beachside resort community called Surfside. Well, Surfside is the place where people who live in Galveston go when they want to go to the beach. That might be a good way to put it. If you drive south out of Galveston on Seawall Boulevard there, for about 20-something miles, you come to the end of the island, Galveston Island. You cross a bridge over to another island, San Luis Island, I think. And then you drive another 20 miles or so to the end of that island, and you get to Surfside, a wonderful little resort community with condos and restaurants and a beautiful beach. A lot of Texans love that as kind of like their secret little getaway beach that happens to be really close to Houston and things like that. This is not where we are going. The people at Surfside, when at the end of that island, they probably look across this inlet, this ship channel that used to be the mouth of the Brazos River until 1913, when a big flood changed the course of the river and put it a little bit further down the coast. But it was a big channel and it's a big port and all kinds of things like that. And the Surfside people, while they're enjoying themselves, look across that body of water and think, what's over there? I wonder what's over there. That looks interesting. That's where we're going. And as a consequence, it's not near as easy to get to as Surfside, of course. And you have to turn way up by Houston and go southwest until you finally, and go through a bunch of little towns until you get to Quintana Beach Park, or sometimes called Fort Quintana. It's a wonderful, it appears to be, a wonderful little park that has, 40 or 50 RV sites. And it's just pretty. And the main thing about this park is this area is the nature, the wildlife, a nature preserve. It is an incredible place for viewing migrating birds or even monarch butterflies. When monarch butterflies gather up in these great swarms in North America and head down to the mountains of Mexico where they spend the winter, they come to Quintana Park and the little island that it's on as one of their stopping points. And about the first or second week of November is when this happens. Millions of monarch butterflies descend upon this park. It sounds incredible. Oh, it's also got some historical value about the Civil War, World War II, and even as a Mexican post. But it sounds really interesting. It sounds like one of these little secret hideaways that people go to, and then they realize they don't want to tell anybody else about it because they don't want the world knowing about it. From what I've read about it, it sounds fascinating and beautiful. So that's where we're headed today. And I've checked the weather report. The weather's going to be 85 degrees or so the entire time we're going to be there. They've got this wonderful beach and this fishing pier and these places to hike. We can't wait. And so it's kind of off the beaten path, but that's the kind of places we like. Let's go to Fort Quintana, or also what's called Quintana Beach Park. This spot is fantastic. They have this little garden and pond and stuff like that. For a lot of the animals, the migratory birds that come through this area, this is one of the places where you can see them. You can see all kinds of amazing birds from these little walk paths. I was going to say, this is a very historical place in lots of different ways, and it's neat for all of that. But what I didn't know was the natural, I guess you could say, aspects associated with this park in terms of, like, for example, the migratory flyway and stuff like that. Would you tell us a little bit about that and the kind of animals, the birds that might be coming through here, and when they come through?
Okay. We are located directly in the Central Flyway for the bird migration in the spring and in the in the winter. They mostly come through in the spring in beginning of April through maybe the first week of May, but probably the hot time would be mid-May to mid-April to late April. And we see all kinds of tropical birds. We see like painted bunnings, indigo bunnings, tanagers. I don't know all the names off the top of my head, but we do see a lot of them come through. And the Neotropical Bird Sanctuary that's just right down the block from us, they have this big observation tower that you can go on, and that they have also the migration is so prevalent during that time that they have a little host station over there, and they have volunteers that will help you identify the birds and walk around with you, and show you what's in there. And they keep a list and they post it on like iBird every day, because it's a big thing. People come from out of state to come bird watch during that time at the park. Then we also have a Xeriscape Park, which is right on the other side of the campground here. That's a lot of trails to walk through there. There's a couple of water features that attract the birds. They also attract bobcats and coyotes that we have on the island. We try to make the park basically, people friendly, but we also want to think of it as a wildlife sanctuary. So we do have a lot of species of snakes, a lot of species of water birds and stuff that hang out here, and we like to make it bird and animal friendly as well as people friendly. So that's why when you look out here, you'll see there are some areas mowed, but we leave most of it natural so it can be habitat. So we see a lot of things out here. The monarchs usually migrate through here, and it's like this week is when they should be here. So I just hope you can see them while you're here. Okay, and you have a lot of species of birds here that people would be interested in, different raptors and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that. On a basis, we'll see northern harriers, we'll see osprey, of course brown pelicans. They've come back from the brink, of being endangered. They're off the endangered list now. We see a lot of those. We see great blue herons, snowy egrets, cattle egrets, just all the different types of herons, like little blue herons and green herons, and spoonbill, roseate spoonbills. We've seen those back here in our little pond. Oh, that's a favorite bird for a lot of people. Yeah. Well, my favorite bird, of course, is the red-crested caracara. Oh, yeah. And you have plenty of those that you see? We do have some we have a lot in Brazoria County, not so much like right on the coast. I have seen them down here, but I see the osprey way more often. Well, I saw one yesterday. Yeah, we do see the caracara. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, good. That's really all I wanted you to talk about, and I knew that's the thing you wanted to talk about. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful park, and it's kind of a secret, I think. Everybody talks about Surfside. Everybody does, and you would not believe I could count. If I had $1 for every time somebody said this is a hidden gem. I mean, it's everybody says that. Yeah. So, some people say, well, I'm not going to tell anybody about it because I want to camp and I don't want anybody to be here. I want to all to myself. I mean, that happens all the time. Yeah. So. Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you very much for your time and for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. But it's a legless lizard. He's crazy. And the difference between basically a lizard and a snake at first glance is going to be ears. Yeah. Snakes have no sense of hearing. Lizards have ears. He has ears. Isn't that cool? Yeah, and his tail is very delicate. It won't just break off, it'll shatter. And start wiggling like crazy. Yeah, like a lot of other lizards. As you can see, this area here with this gun, it has been fenced off
I'm not just up here, you know, taking pictures without anybody knowing it. The director of this park has given us special permission to be up here and take these videos. Okay, just like in Port Aransas down the coast, and right up the way here to Galveston, the inlet here at Quintana and Velasco were considered, well, an important inlet to protect, okay? You could come up this area right here behind me and it would take you to the Brazos River and ports beyond. Not only that, but they had an incredible number of industries here that were worth being protected from Nazi submarines, okay? Now we know Nazi submarines actually sunk dozens of ships off the coast of Texas here in the Gulf of Mexico, and if you count the ones all the way down to the Caribbean, it was hundreds. Thousands of people lost their lives due to the operations of Nazi submarines right off the coast here. Well, in order to try to at least protect the port from Nazi submarines, they put the same kind of artillery here that they had at Port Aransas, and that is the 155 GPF guns. These are rifled long guns and not like you see here. This is a howitzer. This is the M1 howitzer. It makes a very good representation of what was like here, but not like the GPFs. The GPFs had longer range, and they functioned a lot better in terms of accuracy and range. So this looks great. I encourage you to come here and see what it was like when we had to worry about World War II off of our shores, okay? And imagine what this was like. They had a military base here. They had a huge military base just across the way there in Galveston. In fact, they had 3 of them. If you want to get a glimpse of what it's like, come here and see this here at Fort Quintana Park in Brazoria County, Texas. Now, they had, you know, installations like this all the way up the eastern seaboard, and yet ships were being sunk within sight of land. You could come out at night and you could see the fires and the attacks. Why didn't they tell me this when I was young, that World War II really did come to our shores? Okay, so anyway, you can tell the difference between this and, say, the 155 GPF is because, well, for one thing, the French GPF only had 4 tires, and this has 8. Also, it's a lot shorter. Now, this one is rifled. We'll show you a picture of that here in just a second. And just like the artillery gun, but the GPF was a real artillery gun, okay? And then below that is like a mortar, which just kind of shoots up and has very little accuracy. This howitzer is in between a mortar and an artillery gun like the GPF. So it had a lot more accuracy, but it wasn't used here, or it was used here only for a little while. That'd probably be the better way to describe it. The main guns that they put on the shore here was those 155 GPFs that were made in France. Or some of them were made in the United States, but it was still the French design. Anyway, this is the inlet here that once was the mouth of the Brazos River, but then a big flood in 1913 changed it to a little bit down the river. But it's still an important port, an important asset to all kinds of industry, and they had a gun here to defend it from German U-boats. This is really a sad thing to see. This old girl has really been through a lot. The salt air and the storms and everything is just taking their toll on her. This is just sad. The Army has an office where they actually loan out pieces of artillery equipment and things like that to places like your local VFW and things of that nature. The director of the park here of Fort Quintana is working real hard with the Army to try to get a replacement for here, but even that's going to be incredibly expensive. I mean, sure, the Army will either loan it to you or lease it to you for next to nothing, but you still have to pay to get it here and get it put in place. But like I said, this is a howitzer, not one of the GPFs, and I would hope that they can get one of those GPFs here. But this is just so sad to see a war hero like this just come to this. Strangely enough, I believe that those little trees underneath the big palm tree there are called toothache trees. And the reason for that is because the Native Americans realized, I'm not sure if it was the leaves or the little bumps on the bark, but it had an astringent or something like that in it that you could chew on that would numb your gums and your lips and stuff like that. So if you had a toothache, you could put it on there and you could chew on it and the toothache would go away. Okay, I'm standing here at this end of the jetty of the inlet that separates Fort Quintana and Velasco and Surfside. Everybody's heard of Surfside. Everybody likes to vacation there and things of that nature. We're on the Fort Quintana side, which is another great vacation spot. But historically, I want to talk about this inlet right here. This was at one time the actual mouth of the Brazos River until a big flood in 1913 changed the course of the river, and now it's a little bit further down the coastline. But this was the mouth of the Brazos River, which made it a real important place in which to come in and then be able to travel up the Brazos River and go into the mainland. Okay, it was a port. It was very important place for shipping and things of that nature. But the interesting historical aspects of this place is when it was the mouth of the Brazos River, it made it strategically important to the Mexican government, to the Confederate government for the Civil War, and for World War II. We saw the coastal artillery here at Fort Quintana, where they tried to protect the coast from German U-boats and things of that nature. But also it was almost a daily battle between Confederates and Union ships trying to get up the mouth of the Brazos River to either get in and capture stuff or get supplies or do whatever. Union ships, if they wanted fresh water, they couldn't come in here. They had to go clear to New Orleans. So they were trying to sneak in here. It was quite the big deal, and Confederate Marines were constantly fighting them here. And this was, like I said, the mouth of the Brazos River. And right across the way was, and you can barely see it over there, there's not much there, there is Fort Velasco. Now, Fort Velasco is famous because that is where Santa Anna supposedly signed the Treaty of Velasco, ceasing the hostilities between Mexico and Texas and ending the Texas Revolution. This was after, of course, the Battle of San Jacinto. Now, he came down to Velasco and he signed this treaty. Now, he wouldn't sign the treaty unless we put on there that this was Santa Anna, the head of the Mexican government, which he kind of wasn't by then. And Mexico had already kind of disowned him and decided that all this stuff that he was doing in Texas was folly and for his ego. And so he had no real power at this point. And even so, the treaty, as it's often called, really wasn't a treaty. All he really did was say, hey, I'm not going to be attacking you anymore, pending a meeting between you and the Mexican government to sue for peace and for independence. And he didn't promise independence. He didn't promise it. He just promised he wasn't gonna attack us anymore for the time being. And it wasn't a treaty. It wasn't ratified by the Mexican government. There was nothing official about it. But 10 years later, James Polk, President of the United States, called it a treaty, called it the Treaty of Velasco. And he wanted to make a case for when Mexican soldiers attacked Fort Texas. It became known as Fort Brown and then Brownsville. When they came across the Rio Grande and actually had hostilities there, Polk wanted to frame it as Mexican soldiers came into U.S. soil and they're the ones that caused all the hostilities. He wanted that to be the cause of the Mexican-American War, because Texas had just been annexed by the United States, and when they came across the Rio Grande, in his interpretation of the Treaty of Velasco, which, like I said, it never even really was, they'd come on American soil and killed Lieutenant Brown, and then they named the fort after him, and the rest is history. And so this is what was the mouth of the Brazos River, one of the most important rivers in the state of Texas, in the history of the state of Texas. And then it moved, of all things. But right across the way over there, you might see a little bitty structure. There's hardly anything over there, or I would go over there. But the what was Fort Velasco, which goes down in Texas history as when Santa Anna signed for, agreed to independence, but really that's not what happened.